Welcome to Conspiracist. Today, we're diving deep into a really complex hypothesis. The idea that governments might be intentionally hiding evidence of, well, global banking conspiracies.
It's a persistent idea, definitely.
Yeah, and we've gathered quite a range of sources to look into it. We'll be touching on the history of central banking, some of the newer conspiracy theories around digital currencies.
Right, CBDCs.
Exactly. And also looking at things like offshore banking leaks, how the Federal Reserve actually operates.
And maybe even the psychology behind why people believe in these kinds of theories in the first place.
Precisely. Our goal here is really to evaluate the claims, the evidence, the reasoning behind this idea of intentional concealment, all very objectively.
Sounds good. So where should we start? Maybe with the historical background. Why central banks were even created.
Good idea. Because they weren't just conjured out of thin air, were they? Institutions like the Federal Reserve, set up in 1913.
Right, that followed some pretty major financial bumps, like the panic back in 1907. The initial idea was fairly specific: create a more stable, flexible currency, and crucially, act as a lender of last resort if banks got into trouble.
But their job description kind of expanded over time, didn't it?
It really did. Before World War I, the focus wasn't so much on, keeping the domestic economy humming smoothly day to day.
Okay.
It was really after the war that goals like keeping employment up, boosting economic activity, managing inflation,
Yeah.
those became much more central aims.
And under the gold standard, that internal stuff jobs, prices often played second fiddle to keeping the currency pegged to gold, right? Maintaining those reserves was paramount.
Absolutely. External stability, meaning the gold reserves, often trumped internal stability, like prices and output. And the whole idea of a central bank ensuring financial stability, that evolved too.
So the lender of last resort idea was there, but maybe not fully formed.
It existed, yeah, but the period between the wars with all those bank failures.
Especially the Great Depression in the U.S.
Exactly. That really drove home the need for, well, stronger safety nets. That's when you see things like federal deposit insurance come in, much heavier regulation.
Like separating commercial and investment banking.
Right, things like Glass-Steagall.
Yeah.
And interestingly, after those kinds of interventions, there was a long stretch, decades really, of relative financial calm in many developed countries.
Okay, so that historical context is important. Fast forward to today, and we have these new central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, sparking a whole new wave of, well, conspiracy theories?
Yes, they definitely are. And it's a pretty diverse group raising concerns.
What's the core anxiety there?
A big part of it seems to be about government control and surveillance. The idea is if money is purely digital and state-run, could a government, especially maybe a more authoritarian one, track every single transaction?
And potentially block payments or even freeze accounts.
That's the fear, that compliance could be enforced financially. It taps into that broader unease some people feel about government reach, into personal finances.
And social media seems to pour fuel on this fire.
Oh, absolutely. These platforms are amplifiers. Theories spread fast, get reinterpreted, and find communities of people who are already skeptical of authority.
It's like an echo chamber effect sometimes.
It can be, yes. Without traditional media gatekeepers, these narratives can really take hold.
So what did these theories often lead people to believe or do?
Well, some advocate for resisting CBDCs entirely, like only using physical cash, avoiding payment apps because of data collection worries.
A sort of digital opt-out.
Exactly. And some reports even suggest a noticeable number of people might consider protesting if CBDCs were actually rolled out.
And we're seeing politicians pick up on this too, aren't we?
We are. Some political figures frame CBDCs as a threat to liberty, another example of government overstepping its bounds. It plugs into existing political narratives quite neatly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to offshore banking. It always sounds secretive, maybe a bit shady. What's the reality?
Well, the first thing to say is having an offshore bank account isn't automatically illegal.
Right. There can be legitimate reasons.
There can be. But its history is definitely tangled up with things like hiding money to avoid taxes, money laundering, other illegal stuff. So naturally, governments and regulators scrutinize it heavily.
And there are rules about declaring foreign accounts, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely. For example, U.S. citizens with foreign financial assets over a certain amount have to report them to the IRS under laws like FACTA.
But then you get these massive leaks, like the Swiss secrets data.
Precisely. Leaks like that, or the Panama Papers before them, they suddenly shine a spotlight on who holds these accounts.
And it often includes politicians, wealthy individuals.
Yes, and sometimes people with, let's say, questionable backgrounds or unclear sources of wealth. These leaks inevitably raise questions about tax obligations, where the money came from.
And the sheer scale, billions potentially hidden, feeds into those conspiracy narratives about secret financial dealings.
Understandably so. It highlights a system that can seem opaque and accessible mainly to the powerful or the illicit.
Now, another institution central to many of these theories is the Federal Reserve. What can the Fed actually do? What are its real powers?
It's powerful, no doubt, but its direct control is mainly over short-term interest rates. Think the federal funds rate.
Okay.
Long-term rates, the ones that really influence big investment decisions, mortgages, things like that. They're shaped by much broader economic forces, market expectations, global events, stuff way beyond the Fed's direct control.
So the idea that the Fed has its hand on every single economic lever is probably an exaggeration.
It's an oversimplification, definitely. But the Fed does have critical jobs aimed at keeping the financial system stable.
Like what?
Well, supervising and regulating banks is a big one, making sure they're sound. Also ensuring payment systems how money moves between banks are safe and efficient, and providing banking services to banks and the U.S. government itself.
And its structure is a bit unusual too, right? Not purely government.
That's correct. It's a system. You've got the Board of Governors in Washington, which is a government agency.
Yeah.
But then there are 12 regional Federal Reserve banks.
Okay.
And these regional banks have features of both private and public entities. Member commercial banks in their district actually own stock in their regional Fed bank and elect most of its directors. The rest are appointed by the Board of Governors.
So it's a hybrid structure. And who sets the main monetary policy, like interest rates?
That's the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC. It includes the Board of Governors and 5 of the regional reserve bank presidents. Their job is to aim for maximum employment and stable prices, the famous dual mandate.
How do they actually try to achieve that? What are their tools?
Key tools include setting that target range for the federal funds rate, the rate banks charge each other for overnight loans. They also set the interest rate paid on reserves that banks hold at the Fed.
Okay.
And then there are open market operations buying and selling government securities, basically to influence the amount of money available in the banking system.
And they're also watching out for broader risks.
Constantly. They monitor risks across the financial system, supervise the really big important financial institutions, the sci-fis, and even run stress tests to see if those big banks could handle a major economic downturn.
And they work with other agencies too.
Yes, they collaborate with bodies like the Financial Stability Oversight Council here in the U.S. and internationally with organizations like the IMF. It's a complex web of responsibilities.
It certainly sounds complex. It helps to understand the mechanics. But let's zoom out again. Why do conspiracy theories, particularly financial ones, take hold? What's the psychology?
Well, research points to a few key human motivations. Often these theories pop up when things feel uncertain or threatening. They offer a simple, albeit often wrong, explanation for complicated or scary events. Gives a sense of order to chaos, maybe?
A way to make sense of things.
Exactly. That's the epistemic motivation, the desire for understanding, for certainty. And then there are social reasons. Believing in a conspiracy can connect you with others who share that belief, creating a sense of belonging and us versus them.
Maintaining a positive group identity, perhaps.
Could be part of it, yeah. Feeling like you're in the know when others aren't.
And what are the broader effects when these theories spread widely?
That's where it gets concerning. Widespread misinformation, including these conspiracy theories, can seriously erode trust.
Trust in what?
In institutions, mainly. Governments, science, legitimate news sources, democracy itself. Studies show this erosion of trust can lead to people disengaging, feeling cynical, which isn't healthy for society.
It potentially destabilizes things.
It can, yeah.
Let's touch on some specific conspiracy theories that have involved banking and finance. Some have very dark histories.
They do. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are a prime and terrible example. For centuries, you've had these false narratives about secret Jewish plots to control the world, often through manipulating banking and finance.
The Rothschild family often comes up in those, right?
Persistently.
Yeah.
As pioneers in international finance, they became a target for baseless anti-Semitic theories, alleging they wield this hidden, malevolent power over global events and economies. It's completely unfounded, but damaging.
And there are more modern movements, too, that incorporate distrust of the financial system.
Yes. The sovereign citizen movement is one. Their core belief is often that the existing government is illegitimate because of some secret conspiracy. And this almost always includes deep distrust of the financial system, banks, the Fed, seeing them as tools of this supposed illegitimate power.
And QAnon, does that touch on finance?
QAnon is broad and, frankly, often incoherent, but yes, elements of distrust towards government and financial institutions are definitely woven in. Sometimes it overlaps with sovereign citizen ideas, portraying banks and finance as part of a nefarious global cabal.
So financial institutions become symbols or tools within these larger narratives.
Often, yes. They represent power, complexity, and sometimes secrecy, which makes them easy targets for conspiratorial thinking.
Okay, so we've covered quite a bit today. We've looked at the hypothesis that governments might be hiding global banking conspiracies. We examined the history that led to central banks.
So the push for stability after crises.
We looked at modern anxieties around things like CBDCs, the realities of offshore banking, how the Fed actually functions.
And the psychological drivers behind why people might gravitate towards these conspiracy narratives.
Exactly. And what seems clear from the sources is this tension. You have real historical financial instability that led to complex systems like central banking and regulation.
Which themselves can become targets of suspicion.
Right. And alongside that, you have this persistent stream of conspiracy theories targeting these very institutions. And modern finance, with its complexity and new tech like digital currencies, just provides more fuel for both legitimate questions and these more speculative, sometimes unfounded narratives.
Understanding both the history and the psychology seems pretty crucial to navigating it all.
I agree. It requires careful, objective assessment of the evidence. Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.